Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining in on my session today. My name is Ashley Butler. I'm the director of a domestic violence program here in New Jersey, as well as a graduate student. Today, I'm going to be talking with you about peer to peer online learning initiatives for scholarly writing in graduate school for non traditional students. So, what is a non traditional student and why are they struggling with foundational writing and research proficiency? So, when I talk about a non traditional student, I'm referring to the BIPOC community. I'm referring to adult learners. I'm referring to those living in a lower socioeconomic status. So, I have really focused a lot of my work over the past year specifically on non traditional students. Over the course of the last year, I have been a academic support tutor in my graduate school. And very quickly, I realized that a lot of these non-traditional students were severely struggling with their foundational writing and research proficiency. And I've very much been intrigued to learn why that is. Now, these non-traditional students are in need of more supports that unfortunately universities are just not equipped to handle at this current time. Professors have large classrooms full of students, and they're not always able to center their time around a small number of students. And this just goes to show the need that universities have to provide more resources and available supports to non traditional students to help them succeed. I think it's amazing over the course of the past few years that universities continue to admit more non traditional students into graduate schools. But how are we really supporting them when we talk about foundational writing and research proficiency? So, what I did was I created a bridge program to help fill this gap for students in graduate school due to the need that I saw as a tutor over the past year. And I was able to implement this bridge program this past fall semester and implement it with incoming first year, first semester graduate students. Now, many of these students were non traditional students. As we see in graduate school, we have a lot of adult learners that have not been in school for 10, 15, 20 years, and they don't remember how to write an APA or MLA, whatever form your graduate school may write in. They've never conducted research to write scholarly papers, or it's been so long that they're having difficulty. And universities do not have specialized ongoing support programs for these non traditional students who need additional help in their learning. Now, the bridge program that I created is four specific modules of research skills and scholarly writing taught by students for students. And I think this is the most important piece of this bridge program is the fact that it is taught by students for students. As we know, there is a power dynamic when we're talking about student and professor. Not all students feel comfortable enough to speak to their professors about questions or difficulties that they're having, especially when their grade is counting on it. It can be uncomfortable, and they might not want to speak in front of an entire class of students as well. So we're able to take away that barrier when students are teaching students in graduate school. So I think that the only way that this bridge program is truly going to be effective is if it's able to be taught from peer to peer. I've noticed while I was teaching this bridge program that students not only were being engaged with me as a colleague and as a peer, but they were more likely to engage in my tutoring services after these modules. They were able to create comfortability with me. They were able to see that I was on the same level as them. There was no hierarchy, there was no power dynamic. I was one of them. And I understood what they were going through. Maybe I was in the same classes as them. Maybe I took these classes before. So I think when we're talking about peer to peer, it really assists in their learning and it really fosters an additional learning environment outside of the traditional classroom. And I think that's where a lot of graduate schools are lacking. We're really taught this specific way of learning with professors in these classrooms at these universities. But how can we get out of these traditional norms and kind of look at other ways that non-traditional students could benefit? Because Over the past few years, I think it's been absolutely phenomenal that more universities and their graduate schools are accepting non-traditional students into their schools. But how are they fostering their growth, right? How are they really helping them with their research skills, with their scholarly writing, and to see them succeed throughout graduate school? A lot of these universities are missing that piece. And I personally feel that this bridge program can really be effective in graduate schools throughout the country to foster this additional learning environment. Now, I've created 4 modules. These modules consist of finding scholarly sources, the content, writing an APA, and fostering communities. Now, it's really important to note that I was able to create these 4 modules designed to be customizable blocks. So, as we know, all graduate schools have various different majors, right? So these need to be customizable. One graduate school may write an APA, one graduate school might write an MLA. So it is important to note that though these modules should have variations and be very similar, they can be customizable. Now, in module 1, when we're talking about finding scholarly sources, I did note that many students in graduate school had no idea how to find peer-reviewed journal articles just by using something such as Google Scholar. So it's really important, right? When we're talking about building foundational skills to get through graduate school, we need to give them that ongoing foundational learning. So if we're able to teach students how to find scholarly sources simply by walking them through step by step how to use the online library, right? How to find these sources, what sources are good to utilize, what sources you may want to steer away from. So really focusing on how to find the best scholarly sources to write their scholarly writing papers. Then we move on to module 2, which is the contents, right? So what is the bulk of their paper, right? So how do you write a scholarly paper? How do you, proofread, right? How do you look for specific guidelines to follow depending on what your professor is giving you to write about? So really talking about how to write a paper overall. Some students even need to be taught how to proofread their papers. For example, reading aloud, maybe some, tips to creating paragraphs, right? So really just about the contents of the paper. Then we move on to module 3, which is writing an APA. And like I noted, customizable. This can be writing in MLA, Chicago, whatever your graduate school follows. So a lot of students don't fully understand the guidelines necessary when writing in specific things such as APA or MLA. So we're able to discuss with them indentations, what your reference page should look like, what your cover page should look like. Those are really important, again, when talking about foundational skills for students. If you do not know how to write a paper in APA, how are you going to succeed through graduate school? So all of these are foundational learning that's really important. And again, like I stated before, and I just want to reiterate again, this peer-to-peer of students teaching students takes away that feeling of students thinking, I should already know this, or I don't want to ask this question, or am I the only person in the class who is struggling with this? So it's really bringing that comfortability and creating an open, safe space for clients to, in the classroom to be able to ask these questions and foster this learning environment. Next, we're going to talk about the 4th module, which is fostering communities. So this module is really able to, first of all, wrap up all of the modules that was already talked about, but also really hone in on the importance of creating communities within your colleagues, within students in school, right? So talking about building study groups, and just skills, right? Especially when we're talking about online students and online learning, which we see consistently, across the board, especially post-COVID, of so many students doing online learning and things of that nature. So being able to effectively create a study group, being able to have connections with your fellow colleagues if you're struggling, if you need to vent about what's going on in the classroom, and just having support and someone to lean on. So really focusing on that in that module is very important. So I believe these 4 modules being taught in graduate schools for incoming graduate students first semester to assist them with these foundational skills will help them become successful throughout the rest of graduate school because they're able to have these additional research skills and scholarly writing foundational skills to take with them throughout graduate school. Now, I was able to conduct a post-course survey with 12 respondents. So as you see here, we were looking at level of skill and knowledge at the start of the course, level of skill and knowledge at the end of the course, level of skill and knowledge required to complete the course, and contribution to of the course to your skill and knowledge. Now, as you see here, most students felt that it was very good or excellent as they were able to learn through the modules and complete throughout. In this continued survey, we talked about learning objectives were clear, was course content organized and planned, was course workload appropriate, and was course organized to allow all students to participate fully. As you can see, all of these were answered agree or strongly agree. So I really noticed throughout this bridge program, not only in this post survey, but also in conversations that I had with students, how much they were able to learn and engage and foster through this bridge program that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to receive. Universities and graduate school assume that students are coming into graduate school with these foundational skills. But when we're talking about non-traditional students who come from a lower socioeconomic status, maybe you're the first individual, first generation, right, to come to college. Maybe they haven't been in college in 15, 20 years, right? We need to acknowledge that these students are in need of additional resources and additional support. And if we can provide them peer-to-peer support, it's going to help foster their growth outside of the classroom without putting extra stress on the professors, right? The professors are already trying to teach these large number of students and make sure that they're getting their course content across to everyone. Right, so they can't always focus or have the time and ability to hone in on one or a small group of students. So when we're able to implement this peer-to-peer learning, it's really going to help foundationally throughout the entire course of an individual's graduate school. And like I stated before, not only does this help build their skills, it also assisted them in being comfortable to reach out for additional supports. Even after this bridge program, I noticed how many students then felt comfortable to come to me to get additional tutoring services because they were confident in my knowledge. They were confident that this was a safe space and that there was comfortability between us. So it's also about building those relationships peer to peer. So again, it really just provides these opportunities to have additional supports outside of the classroom to build on these foundational skills and knowledge for these incoming graduate students. Now, I truly do appreciate feedback. As I stated, this was my first time providing this bridge program to graduate students. So I really would love to know what you have to say about peer-to-peer learning in graduate school for non-traditional students. Have you ever had any experience in this? You know, how do we continue creating this inclusive online learning environment for all students, but especially non-traditional students? And is peer-to-peer learning best suited for non-traditional students, or are there other effective ways that you have come across or that you have in mind for non-traditional students? And also, do universities across the country have specified programs for non-traditional students? And if not, what programs can we continue to create throughout the country to make it so that universities are able to provide these additional supports to our non-traditional students? You can always reach me via email. And like I said, I truly appreciate all feedback that you have for me. Thank you so much.